Federal agents launched one of the largest anti-counterfeiting crackdowns in U.S. history, as ICE, the FBI, ATF, and Homeland Security executed a massive coordinated raid across Manhattan's Chinatown, transforming Canal Street's bustling counterfeit marketplace into a federal crime scene in a single afternoon, shutting down more than a dozen blocks, detaining numerous individuals, and seizing warehouses packed with fake luxury handbags, electronics, watches, jewelry, perfume, and more. Witnesses described chaos as tactical teams surged into the narrow streets, sirens echoing off buildings while vendors slammed down gates and shoppers fled for cover. Within minutes, the usually frenetic district fell silent beneath bright yellow federal tape. Authorities revealed that the operation was the culmination of a months-long investigation into transnational criminal organizations that had converted Canal Street into the U.S. hub of a global counterfeit supply chain stretching from New York to China, Turkey, and the Middle East, moving illicit goods through American cities and laundering millions of dollars through shell companies before funneling profits into narcotics trafficking and cyberfraud operations. Inside hidden rooms and steel-sealed storage spaces, agents found meticulously organized inventories, shipping documents, financial ledgers, international wire records, counterfeit IDs, foreign passports, and unregistered firearms, all pointing to a Fortune 500-style criminal enterprise disguised as a tourist novelty market. As arrests began, crowds swelled, filming the confrontation, shouting at agents, and in some cases grabbing abandoned merchandise or clashing with officers. One agent was struck by a thrown object, another knocked down before being pulled to safety, forcing DHS to deploy reinforcements, helicopters to hover overhead, and negotiators to order dispersal as federal trucks blocked intersections and tactical teams swept the final blocks. By day's end, what had long been dismissed as a harmless bargain district was exposed as a sophisticated hub for global financial crime, its hidden infrastructure dismantled in a single, sweeping federal strike. At least 3 of those arrested were identified as mid-level distributors, critical links between U.S. street vendors and overseas suppliers, who, according to investigators, moved millions of dollars in counterfeit merchandise across state lines every month, prompting a blunt DHS statement that emphasized this was not a crackdown on street vendors, but a direct strike against organized crime. Assistant Secretary Tricia Emelin praised agents for maintaining restraint despite what she described as aggressive interference from hostile bystanders, a sentiment echoed by the FBI, which called the operation essential for protecting national security and consumer safety. The aftermath sent shockwaves through New York's retail landscape. Empty tables, shuttered gates, and crates piled along curbs replaced the familiar bustle of Canal Street, while aerial footage captured agents hauling thousands of fake handbags and watches into waiting trucks, tagging each piece as evidence. As sunset fell, the street once synonymous with nonstop bargaining stood eerily silent. But behind the dramatic images was an investigation more than a year in development, involving months of financial tracking, shipping manifest analysis, and decryption of messages exchanged between overseas manufacturers and U.S. distributors. Homeland Security sources disclosed that the counterfeit empire spanned manufacturing centers in Guangdong, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong and relied on freight warehouses in California, Texas, and New Jersey, operating with the organizational structure of a multinational corporation, complete with recruiters, logistics coordinators, and financial managers. Canal Street was merely its most visible storefront. Intelligence showed the network laundering millions monthly through fake import-export firms that disguised transfers as textile purchases, moving money into offshore accounts under shell company names with no employees, no offices, and no legitimate trade activity. Companies that IRS criminal investigators have now placed under audit. Early valuations suggest the counterfeit goods seized in New York may exceed $50 million. But more alarming were translated intercepted messages in which organizers boasted that Canal Street was a safe zone due to light local enforcement and constant tourist traffic, even discussing plans to expand similar hubs in Queens, Philadelphia, and Miami, a revelation that pushed federal agencies to accelerate the operation. As one agent remarked, had authorities waited another month, the network would likely have doubled in size. With the raid complete, the investigation has entered a new phase as analysts comb through seized phones, computers, and financial ledgers to identify high-level while Interpol and Chinese authorities coordinate with U.S. officials to trace the overseas manufacturers feeding the network. Federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York are now preparing charges including money laundering, conspiracy, and trafficking in counterfeit goods that could carry decades-long prison sentences. Officials say this operation marks a fundamental shift in how the United States views counterfeiting. What was once dismissed as a petty, low-priority offense is now acknowledged as a national security threat tied to drug trafficking, human smuggling, and global cybercrime. Each fake handbag or counterfeit watch, they warn, carries a shadow trail that ultimately leads to organized criminal enterprises, By nightfall, Canal Street's vibrant lights were gone, its once crowded stalls sealed behind federal notices. And while protesters gathered near Federal Plaza to voice their anger, authorities maintained an unwavering stance. The era of open counterfeit markets is ending. More raids are expected in major cities, including Los Angeles, Houston, and Chicago, with the Canal Street operation serving as only the opening strike in a nationwide effort to dismantle long-entrenched counterfeit supply lines. For now, Chinatown's narrow streets sit in quiet contrast to their former energy, the neon reflections on rain-soaked pavement hiding the remnants of what had been a thriving underground economy. And as agents sort through mountains of seized goods, each box reveals a story of a hidden empire built on deception, exploitation, and greed, an empire that, as this week's raid made unmistakably clear, no longer hides in shadows but in storefronts, marketplaces, and everyday transactions that federal authorities now vow to monitor more closely than ever. Federal agents executed one of the largest, most coordinated crackdowns on counterfeit goods in U.S. history, as ICE, the FBI, ATF, and Homeland Security converged on Manhattan's Chinatown, transforming Canal Street, long known as a bustling hub for imitation merchandise, into a federal crime scene, shutting down more than a dozen blocks, detaining scores of individuals, and seizing warehouses packed with fake luxury handbags, watches, electronics, jewelry, and perfume, all part of a meticulously organized transnational criminal network that had long operated in plain sight. Witnesses described chaos as officers and tactical gear poured into the narrow streets, sirens blaring, store gates slamming shut, and shoppers scattering as federal agents moved methodically from stall to stall, shouting commands, seizing boxers, and marking every item with evidence tags, while yellow federal tape cordoned off each location, instantly transforming a vibrant marketplace into a scene reminiscent of a lockdown zone, complete with hovering helicopters, tactical teams forming defensive lines, and bomb squads inspecting suspicious packages left behind in the sudden confusion. Officials revealed that the operation had been months, if not years, in the making, a meticulously planned strategy aimed at dismantling a sophisticated counterfeit empire stretching from U.S. street vendors to overseas manufacturers in China, Turkey, and the Middle East, with domestic hubs in California, Texas, and New Jersey, all operating with the organizational precision of a multinational corporation. Recruiters, transport coordinators, financial managers, logistics teams, and middlemen ensured a seamless flow of counterfeit goods across state lines and overseas, while shell companies disguised millions of dollars in illicit profits through fake import-export transactions, masking money laundering under the guise of legitimate trade. At least 3 of those arrested were identified as mid-level distributors, critical cogs in the network responsible for moving millions of dollars in counterfeit merchandise each month. And officials emphasized that this raid was a strike against organized crime rather than street vendors, with Assistant Secretary Tricia Emmelin praising agents for their restraint despite aggressive interference from hostile bystanders, a sentiment echoed by the FBI, which underscored the operation as vital to national security and consumer protection. The impact on New York's retail community was immediate and dramatic. Empty tables lined the streets, gates remained shuttered, crates of counterfeit goods stacked along curbs, while helicopter footage captured agents hauling thousands of fake handbags, watches, and electronics into waiting trucks, all cataloged meticulously with bright orange evidence tags, marking a historic moment as Canal Street, the symbolic heart of bargain hunting and imitation goods, stood silent for the first time in decades. A stark visual reminder that what many had dismissed as harmless commerce was in fact a front for a global criminal enterprise. Behind the spectacle of the day was an investigation exceeding a year in development, with federal analysts tracing shipping manifests, financial transactions, and encrypted messages exchanged between U.S. distributors and overseas manufacturers, gradually revealing a network with the reach and sophistication of a multinational corporation. Homeland Security sources disclosed that manufacturing centers in Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong funneled goods into U.S. distribution hubs, where organized teams of transport coordinators and financial managers ensured rapid, reliable movement of counterfeit merchandise into street-level markets, while money laundering occurred through carefully constructed shell companies with no real operations, no employees, and bank activity designed to conceal illicit flows. Activities now under scrutiny by IRS criminal investigators. Early estimates placed the value of goods seized in New York alone at more than $50 million. But perhaps more concerning were intercepted messages in which organizers boasted that Canal Street operated as a safe zone due to minimal local enforcement and the constant flow of tourists, and even discussed plans to expand similar counterfeit operations to Queens, Philadelphia, and Miami. Intelligence that accelerated federal action, as agents recognized that further delay could allow the network to double in size, embedding itself deeper into the national economy. As arrests continued, crowds of onlookers gathered, some filming events on cell phones, others shouting at officers, while a few attempted to grab abandoned merchandise, prompting DHS units to deploy additional reinforcements to control the perimeter and maintain order. And helicopters hovered overhead, broadcasting the unfolding operation nationwide. Inside the seized warehouses and hidden storage rooms, investigators discovered meticulously labeled and boxed counterfeit electronics, luxury handbags, watches, jewelry, perfume, ledgers, shipping receipts, international wire transfers, unregistered firearms, counterfeit identification documents, and stacks of foreign passports, all pointing to a sprawling international criminal network structured like a legitimate business enterprise, with each vendor acting as a cog in a massive machine, responsible for coordinating production, distribution, and the laundering of proceeds, illustrating the sophistication and scale of modern counterfeit operations that intertwine commerce with organized crime. Federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York are now preparing charges of money laundering, conspiracy, and trafficking in counterfeit goods, offenses carrying potential decades-long prison sentences, while Interpol and Chinese authorities have been notified to track overseas manufacturers, highlighting a new era of international coordination against counterfeit networks. Analysts have entered the next investigative phase, examining seized phones, computers, and financial records to trace the network's higher-level financiers, revealing a shadow infrastructure of recruiters, transport coordinators, and financial managers operating with corporate-like precision, moving illicit goods and laundering profits through shell companies in multiple countries. Federal authorities emphasize